Recording in progress.
Hello, and welcome everybody. My name is Marie Macaulay and I work at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning based here in Hamburg, Germany. Thank you very much for being here and welcome to this webinar on transforming literacy learning spaces. We're gathered today to celebrate together the International Literacy Day. This webinar is part of the International Literacy Day celebrations, which take actually place every year around the world since 1967 and are aimed at reminding the public of the importance of literacy as a matter of dignity and human rights, but also to advance the literacy agenda towards more literate and sustainable societies. And in 2022, International Literacy Day is being celebrated worldwide under this theme of transforming literacy learning spaces. Today we'll be hearing from practices from around the world, but more specifically from cities. We have representatives of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities from different regions of the world who will present their effective local literacy policies and practices, and they will also be discussing approaches to literacy learning spaces while exploring how to best reach some of the disadvantaged groups in their respective populations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Today, the webinar will last an hour and a half. It will be available in 2 languages, in English and in Spanish. You can select your preferred language by clicking on the little interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and selecting either language that suits you. To hear the interpreted language, which is Spanish, we would ask that you mute your original audio so that you only hear the interpretation and not both the original sound as well as the interpreted sound. Just keep in mind that the audience is muted and we invite you to use the Q&A to ask questions to the participants and also the chat room if you wish. The webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available on the UIL YouTube channel after the event, and a link will be shared in the chat for all of you to have. So today we will have presentations followed by the Q&A session. In terms of order of presentations, we'll be hearing from our expert, Ms. Ulrike Hannemann, and then we'll be hearing from the individual presentations of the cities of Andong in the Republic of Korea, Mayo-Baleo through video intervention in Cameroon, and Villa Maria, Argentina, who will also, it's important to note that they're currently present at the International Literacy Day celebrations taking place today in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire. But first, we will also be hearing from our team leader at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, Mr. Raúl Valdés-Cotera, who will provide some opening remarks, but also some of the overview of the work of UIL in the context of literacy. Finally, we'll be hearing some closing remarks from Ms. Christina Drews, our program specialist for the Global Network of Learning Cities at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. And I'll be introducing the speakers one by one again once it is their turn to speak. And for now, I'd like to invite our colleague Raúl Valdés-Cotera to speak if he is with us. Raúl, if you're here, otherwise we will, I think, move to our first speaker, if that's okay, and then revert back to Raúl in a little bit. So in that case, I'd like to invite our expert, Ms. Ulrike Hannemann, Independent International Literacy and Education Specialist, to take the floor. And Ulrike, you are welcome to share your screen with us anytime that suits you, and we will make sure that everybody can see it.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
Very well.
Thank you for inviting me to this special event on the occasion of the International Literacy Day. I feel very honored I try to move my screen, my presentation, but I cannot. Sorry.
Try with the arrows, Ulrike, maybe just the next arrow.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, it was blocked for some reason because we were, I think, co-using it. Thank you very much. My presentation is structured into 4 steps or sections: setting the scene, activating the transformative potential of literacy, some global trends, and at the end, some key areas of policy action. Literacy is a key component of the fundamental human right to education. It is an indispensable foundation for independent learning. As a major driver of socioeconomic transformation, it is also critical to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Actually, the achievement of the whole 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development cannot be realized without learning. Literacy and numeracy have to play an essential role in building more peaceful, just, inclusive, and sustainable societies, and in addressing global challenges. These challenges include climate change and natural disasters, pandemic crises such as the current COVID-19 disease, a changing nature of work due to digitalization and new technologies, rapid demographic change, as well as conflict and war. The urgency for transformative action to effectively address global sustainability challenges cannot afford to neglect and leave aside youth and adult literacy and learning. Yet, according to the most recent estimates, there are still 771 million adults aged 15 and above who lack basic literacy skills, 2/3 of them women. New estimates show that 244 million children and youth between the ages of 6 and 18 worldwide were still missing out on school in 2021. The COVID-19 crisis had and is still having a significant negative impact on learners of all ages. It has magnified already existing disparities due to extreme poverty, disability, gender, age, ethnicity, language, and geography, among many other factors, challenging the fulfillment of the right to education, and in particular to literacy and numeracy. However, the crisis has not only intensified persistent challenges, it has also brought about new opportunities, which have led to or require continuous change, adaptation, and transformation of learning environments. On behalf of UNESCO, I have undertaken an analysis of global trends on how literacy stakeholders are leveraging, adapting, and transforming literacy learning spaces with the aim of ensuring continuity of learning or re-engagement in learning of disadvantaged populations in the context of crisis. In addition to available research evidence, I analyzed the 73 programs that were nominated for the 2022 UNESCO International Literacy Prizes, which will be given this afternoon, tomorrow, sorry. This analysis is informed by an expanded vision of literacy, which is also reflected in the Literacy Target 4.6, as well as in the UNESCO Strategy for Youth and Adult Literacy. This broader vision involves applying the lifelong learning principle to literacy. Only in this way it is possible to activate its full transformative potential. Applying the lifelong learning principle to literacy means literacy is understood as a lifelong and life-wide learning process and as part of holistic lifelong learning systems. This further involves putting the special needs, aspirations, and life circumstances of the learners into the center and bringing literacy close to people's everyday lives to motivate them and engage them in learning. This also requires removing potential hurdles to learners' participation in organized learning activities. The creation of enabling or stimulating literacy learning environments entails embedding literacy into economic, social, and cultural activities that people want or need to develop in their daily lives, and thereby creating requirements or opportunities for the use, improvement, and retention of literacy skills to make them sustainable. The demanding task of creating, strengthening, and sustaining enabling literacy learning environments requires both a learner-centered and demand-oriented approach and a whole system approach. So no need to read all the details. This is just to illustrate the complexity of such a whole system approach. This involves applying a whole system approach, considering the teaching and learning process itself, the supporting structures and the contextual dimensions that shape the broader enabling political, legal, socioeconomic, and cultural environment. Hence, any transformation effort in the field of literacy should consider the diverse elements of the entire system. These elements need, of course, to work for the specific learner or learner groups. In other words, it should be learner-centered. Available evidence suggests an infinite variety of venues and places where people can learn and develop their literacy, numeracy, language, digital, and other competences. In general, there is limited recognition of out-of-school literacy and numeracy practices, and a lack of awareness of literacy practices, languages, and local knowledges used in so-called informal learning spaces. The diverse learning spaces in which local or indigenous and intergenerational learning activities take place range from neighborhood spaces to workplaces, marketplaces, religious spaces, and above all, the home as an important learning space where people interact, share, exchange, and learn in dynamic and diverse ways. While some of these spaces are falling out of use, other informal spaces are growing and new spaces are being created. There is an ongoing trend of expanding learning spaces beyond the classroom and educational institutions. This is particularly observable in non-formal education. Non-formal literacy programs can take place in physical or virtual environments and also be found in diverse contexts, such as urban or rural settings, inside and outside of the education system. And settings such as at home, at school, at the workplace, in public, private, and religious places, in adult and community learning centers, libraries, museums, prisons, outdoors under trees, and of course, in digital environments. Many literacy programs use various learning spaces in complementary ways, and they encourage their learners to expand their literacy development activities beyond scheduled classes and classroom spaces. These spaces have the advantage that they are in principle open to everybody and easily accessible. As safety and proximity play an important role, delivery of learning resources or classes at the doorstep in community spaces or in learners' homes can make a difference in times of lockdowns, as well as for displaced, disabled, or elderly persons and girls and women. In the context of school closures during the pandemic, in addition to distance and online learning, home-based learning has moved family literacy and intergenerational learning, as well as community involvement, more into focus. Just by having access to a wide range of interesting and relevant materials and activities, literacy skills can be developed and further enhanced. This is where libraries come in as effective literacy learning and meeting spaces for all age groups. A network of libraries exists in almost every country or major city, and they often enjoy a long-established trust. With their mandate of offering free and equitable access to reading materials and literacy activities, libraries are a practical, sustainable, and cost-effective way of sharing often limited resources. In addition, libraries are ideally placed to bridge digital divides in terms of connectivity by providing access to the internet and information and communication technology. They also can provide the skills necessary to work in information-rich environment. Available research evidence reveals that the creation of enabling literacy learning spaces has been shaped by a range of developments, including the integration of digital ICTs, such as computers, tablets, e-books, and mobile technology. This has, of course, further accelerated during the COVID-19 crisis. Technology-based environments have the potential to enhancing access and outreach, motivating learners to engage or re-engage in learning, improving the quality of teaching and learning, and boosting the possibilities of lifelong learning. However, they can never be an end in itself. Aside from that, many difficulties have to be overcome, and some prerequisites must be met to harness the potential of digital environments, including related policies and strategies, physical hardware and software infrastructures, human and financial resources, implementation modalities, and relevant teaching and learning contents and methodologies. The recently conducted UNESCO survey on the COVID-19 impact on youth and adult literacy reveals that those literacy providers who managed to transition to distance learning faced numerous challenges too. Above all, a lack of funds, limited capacity to equip and support learners and teachers with related devices, materials, and skills, and poor or unavailable internet connections. On the positive side, survey findings point to more awareness of the importance of social, emotional, and mental well-being of all stakeholders for literacy programs to be successful and resilient. There is also a renewed investment in teachers to better prepare them for flexible teaching and learning approaches. And an expanded vision of literacy is increasingly observable. This is, in terms of conclusion, the finding of my study confirm that learner engagement in literacy learning can benefit from leveraging existing innovations, resources, and opportunities, adapting them to the needs, aspirations, and life realities of learners, and transforming literacy learning environments with a whole system approach. The relationship between an individual's motivation to engage and remain in literacy learning and the quality and variety of such literacy stimulating environments is reflected in an increasing emphasis on creating and sustaining such environments as a key element of effective literacy strategies. Building on this analysis of rich experiences as well as available evidence on global trends, I would like to propose the following 5 key areas of policy action to transform literacy learning spaces for the advancement of literacy for all. First, develop a whole system approach to mapping, using, and transforming literacy learning spaces. While a successful literacy strategy requires a whole system approach, there is still a long way to go in most of the countries to achieve full interconnection of the various ongoing promising practices and efforts to develop an enabling literacy learning environment. Whole system approaches to literacy learning will have to work for the learners, especially disadvantaged out-of-school populations. Second, focus on learner needs by engaging, in particular, the most marginalized, the most difficult to reach. Engaging the most marginalized learners in literacy learning requires helping to remove potential hurdles to participation in related learning activities and exploring ways of motivating them to remain long enough in organized learning activities to achieve sustainable literacy proficiency levels. Such personalized, need-based, and learner-centered approaches point to the need to seek continuous communication and interaction with learners. During the pandemic, successful programs achieved this through well-prepared and well-supported educators. Third, foster the professional development of literacy providers and educators. In context of crisis and accelerated dynamics of change, it is indispensable that everyone becomes a lifelong learner, including teachers, program providers, and their partners. Training, pedagogical, and social emotional support, and continuous professional development of literacy providers and educators are contributing to the development of national capacities for innovation. Therefore, this needs to be fostered as a centerpiece of all transforming education efforts. Fourth, continue to leverage the potential of digital technology for literacy teaching and learning. Digital learning environments have become part of the normal, though to varied extents, allowing program providers to increase their attractiveness to specific groups of learners, to expand their outreach, and above all, to keep people in learning during the pandemic. However, in many contexts, including in high-income countries, there are still challenges with connectivity or digital infrastructure, in particular in remote areas and among disadvantaged population groups. Without significant and sustained investment, harnessing the transformative potential of digital learning systems for all will prove difficult, if not impossible. And fifth and last, establish sustainable funding models for literacy based on political commitment and multi-stakeholder partnerships. A key challenge standing in the way of different learning settings to become truly transformational for literacy concerns financing. Creating inclusive and equitable literacy learning environments with a whole system approach requires sustainable funding models based on long-term political commitment, multi-stakeholder partnership development, and financial stability. This will be indispensable to advance the global literacy agenda in the partner cities of the global network of learning cities. And happy International Literacy Day to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ulrike, for such a great comprehensive first intervention for today's webinar on transforming learning spaces and giving us lots of food for thought, both in terms of the types of spaces we can consider as conducive to literacy activities, but also the types of recommendation and some areas for policy action that we can take on board. Maybe we can reflect a little bit more on those once we've heard from the cities to see how these particular areas for policy action reflect to some of our city speakers today. So without further ado, in that case, I think I'd like to move to our presentation from Andong City in the Republic of Korea to give us their point of view, their strategies and their work, an update on their work for literacy in that particular city. So Mr. Kyung-Yu Paik, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, and you're welcome to share your screen.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to introduce our city's representative literacy program on behalf of my hometown. Our literacy program has many good things I'd like to show off, but considering the theme of this meeting, I'll focus on introducing the program's learning space. Let me begin by talking about the program's background, which is highly related to the program's places. Andong City has a large area similar to Schleswig-Holstein state in Germany, and the current total population is about 150,000. So the population density is somewhat low. Like other local cities, most people live downtown, so the city's suburbs that have poor infrastructure and public transportation. Therefore, we had to find a different way to provide the literacy education services in the suburbs. Downtown, four institutions run adult literacy programs as shown on the slide. As you can see from the map, they are uniformly located in the right place downtown, so citizens can easily access one of them. Also, they have been independently running their programs for years, and the night school, the welfare center, and the church only get the city's budget support. The Provincial Office of Education supports the literacy program run by the public library.
노트가 다 보인다.
Okay. How can I? 노트 다 보여. Let me tell you about the suburbs in Andong. The two pictures on the slide show the typical views of the suburbs. I know it is peaceful and beautiful, good place to refresh, but there's literally nothing but fields and houses. Most people living in these areas are old farmers. The 60s are the youngest ones, so they handle all the difficult things in the villages. The thing is, not many, but some are uneducated and illiterate. We gotta do something for them. What can we do? Due to the budget limit, we cannot build new educational places for all these small towns. There's a way. Our city owns a village community halls in the most small towns in the suburbs for the village's welfare. We chose the community halls as the learning spaces. Every community halls have a large living room, so villagers usually hang out there. We utilize the large living room as a perfect classroom during the middle of the day when people rarely use the hall to work outside. You know, the community hall buildings need to be cleaned and organized daily, so it is good for us that the head of each village manages the building instead of the city. We started the program in 2014 and currently run 15 literacy learning spaces in 14 townships area with an annual budget of about 150,000 euro. Those spaces are named the Korean language delivery class, and each class has about 20 elderly students. So we found a way to provide the literacy classes to the suburbs. However, what about the villages that don't have such community halls? Let me show you how we do it. Okay, could you play the video for me that I prepared?
Yes, it's going to come right up. Give us just a little second.
비디오 나올 동안 노트 그거 이게 확정 노트를 보여주게 돼 있는 거야.
이거 안 없어져?
비디오 저쪽에
In order to share my screen, I believe you have to stop sharing yours.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
노트가 다 보이지.
안동시가 글을 모르는 농촌 어르신에게 찾아가 한글을 가르치는 한글 배달 교실을 코로나19로 중단했다가 1년 만에 재개했습니다.
이 수업을 듣는 어르신들이 자신의 집을 코로나 여파로 휴관된 마을회관 대신 교실로 사용하라고 선뜻 내놓은 덕분에 가능했는데요.
너무 괜찮아요. 다행이에요. 걱정 마세요. 잘 지내셨어요. 잘하셨고요. 예. 그래요. 오늘은 진짜 땡땡이는 이거 공부를 했습니다. 자, 그러면 제가 먼저 한 줄 읽으면 어르신들은 따라 읽으시면 됩니다. 예. 햇볕은 쨍쨍, 햇볕은 쨍쨍, 오르르, 땡그라, 따르릉이란 말도 있어요. 시원하고 따르릉 오는 아이들. 맞아요. 요즘 핸드폰은 이런 소리 안 내는데. 엄마 오리, 엄마 오리. 깔깔, 깔깔, 예. 꼴꼴. 예, 맞아요. 이 아이들은 음료수를 마실 때 꼴깍꼴깍 이렇게 작게 마시는 모습이고.
Right, as you can see, some villages are too small to have community halls, but they also demand literacy classes. They always call me again and again, said that when can I get to the literacy class or something. So we send literacy teachers to those houses and provide the class for 3 to 5 elderly students like private lessons. We came up with this way last year to resume the class under the COVID-19 situation. It's like we use the crisis as a new opportunity, and we named the program the Korean language door-to-door class. Last year, we designated 10 students' houses, and this year, 20 students' houses are used for literacy classes. These literacy programs could not be run without several organizations' cooperation. This slide shows the representative organizations related to the program. First, the Andong Lifelong Learning Council at the center of the picture, a private non-profit organization, takes a key role in the program. It operates the 2 literacy programs, managing teachers and students. Second, Andong City Hall plans the programs and provide financial and administrative support to the council. And there are other budget sources. The 2 local public enterprises support the program's budget as well. The general and educational administrative system are strictly separated in Korea, so the curriculum of the literacy programs is under the supervision of the Provincial Office of Education. If the programs do not follow the suggested curriculum by the Office of Education, they will be kicked out. Let me briefly introduce its curriculum. Both programs have similar content. The elderly students learn not only how to read and write, but also basic mathematics, painting, music, and handcrafts for 3 years at the same place. After 3 years, we changed the learning space to a different village to provide equal benefits to the suburbs. The big difference between the 2 is that the Korean language delivery class using the community hall grants the elementary school diploma when graduating. So the elderly who graduated from delivery class can enter actual middle school. The door-to-door class has fewer lecture hours due to the small number of students, but they get much more homework, so the progress of both classes is almost the same. Due to several classes, we need to train literacy teachers continuously. We have trained about 20 new teachers every year since 2014 and held the capacity building workshops to maintain the trained teachers' ability. Also, for the current teachers, regular meetings are held also once a month to share the teaching method and study the lecture contents. In order to motivate the elderly students, we implement some special events. First, we held illustrated poem exhibitions every year since 2016. The students themselves produce all works for exhibition. Also, we publish illustrated poem books, including all works of the exhibition after finishing it. Publishing the poem book started with a crowdfunding event in 2017. Raising money to publish the poem book was a plan to attract the attention of citizens, and it was so successful. Citizens talked about the book and the literacy program over and over again at that time. Another notable event in 2017 was that we brought volunteer doctors to the classes with the cooperation of Andong Hospital for the medical checkup of the students. In the same year, with the cooperation of the Provincial Office of Education, we brought elderly students of all classes to the elementary schools in Andong. The old and young students learned, ate, and did several activities together for a week. And in 2018 and 19, the literacy quiz contest events were held. All adult literacy class students in Andong gathered at the public indoor gymnasium and participated in the contest. It was a truly meaningful event because all student families also came to the event and cheered their parents. Due to the COVID pandemic, we had to stop holding contests since 2020, but we'll resume the event next year. With the literacy quiz contest, our literacy classes strengthened the family's bond using a mobile community application. As shown on the slide, teachers weekly upload pictures of students with the comments about what they learned in the application. And students' sons and daughters also can see the pictures and comments. So they reply to their teacher's message. For example, my mother is awesome, or I'm so proud of my father. Although other sons and daughters of students that live apart, they can see what their old parents did and learned from the mobile application. This slide shows our plan to upgrade the literacy program in the near future. The entire world is covered with digital things, and we can do nothing without them. Therefore, digital literacy education is essential above all things for the elderly. Andong City has secured the budget from the central government for the 4 years of digital literacy education. Next year, we'll focus on training teachers and preparing equipment like tablet PCs, and then this education will be provided parallelly to those who can somewhat read and write in the classes. Finally, I'd like to address the result of Andong's literacy program. First of all, the program contributes to decreasing the number of illiterate people. As you can see from the graph, the illiteracy rate was about 6% in 2013 before starting the program, and it decreased to about 4% in 2016. I got the data from the Korean Statistical Information Service, but unfortunately, it did not collect the illiteracy data from 2017. The latest illiteracy data from another source said that Andong's illiteracy rate in 2019 still remains around 4%. And from that, we can roughly infer from this that about 2% of Andong's total population, about 30,000 people, learned how to read and write since the beginning of the program. Other visible results of the program were the several domestic adult literacy awards. Starting from 2019, Andong's literacy program students are winning awards in national and provincial illustrated poem competitions. Especially 11 students won prizes last year. Literacy education positively affects the mental and physical health of the elderly. Andong City's mayor is also well aware of the importance of this program. With everyone's cooperation, Andong City will continue to manage this valuable program to build a city that leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such an interesting presentation and giving us food for thought also with regards to, I think, what we assume as a learning space to be physical, to give us a sense of what a online space can do, especially in the context of digital learning and digital literacy. I'm just curious because I don't know if I heard well, and maybe some other people might have heard or not, but you mentioned the number of participants who took part in the literacy program in your city and those who learned to read and write as a result. Could you just say the number again, just because it sounded like you said 30,000, which I thought was a very big number.
Yeah, it's just a rough estimation. Since the beginning of the program, the illiteracy rate is decreased about 2%. and the total population of Andong City is about 150,000. So the 2% for that is about 30,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. That's a great presentation, and I think take you a little bit on a tour around the world now. You'll be hearing from a presentation of the mayor of a small town in Cameroon called Mayo Baleo, and he is addressing us today through a video because of connectivity challenges. So my colleague Paolo will prompt the video now for us all to see, and we'll come back after that is over.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers membres du réseau mondial Unesco des villes apprenantes, je vous salue. Je vous remercie pour l'honneur que vous faites à la ville de Mayo Baleo d'intervenir dans la célébration de la Journée internationale de l'alphabétisation de l'édition de 2022. C'est un honneur en tant que ville apprenante de prendre part à cet événement. Et je voudrais remercier particulièrement le réseau Unesco de villes apprenantes pour son dynamisme. Et j'ai été contacté pour parler des activités que nous menons dans notre municipalité en ce qui concerne l'alphabétisation. Et là, je vais d'abord faire l'historique. Et en deuxième lieu, je parlerai des actions menées par la ville de Mayo Baleo en tant que ville apprenante relativement à l'alphabétisation. Et aussi, enfin, donc, je parlerai des perspectives de l'alphabétisation dans notre municipalité. Pour revenir à l'historique, je dois dire que l'alphabétisation est plus ancienne. Sinon, elle est l'aînée de notre municipalité, parce que notre commune a été créée en 1993, alors que l'alphabétisation est née avec les missionnaires qui sont installés dans la localité en 1980. C'est cette année-là que moi, je l'avais déjà dit lors de la conférence internationale sur l'éducation des adultes qui s'est tenue récemment au Marrakech, au Maroc, que j'étais le produit de l'alphabétisation. Donc, c'est grâce à cette campagne, à cette action missionnaire, que j'ai pu apprendre à lire et à écrire pour devenir ce que je suis aujourd'hui. Vous comprenez que j'ai 54 ans. Et ce n'est qu'en 1980 que j'ai appris à lire et à écrire. Donc, 12 ans avant, je ne connaissais rien. Alors, vous parlez donc des activités que nous menons. Et vous voyez que lorsque je suis élu maire de la commune de Mayo Baleo, et compte tenu des avantages que j'ai bénéficié de l'alphabétisation, je ne pouvais pas rester insensible à cette activité. Et c'est pour ça que lorsque les missionnaires sont partis, le centre de littérature père, qui est une des langues locales de la zone, était tombé en décrépitude. Et moi, étant le produit de cette alphabétisation, je me suis rapproché donc des responsables de l'Église pour leur demander qu'on travaille ensemble. Et c'est comme ça que depuis un certain temps, et déjà même en tant que membre de ville apprenante, depuis 2016, nous avons mené des activités dans le sens de renforcer ou bien de relever ce centre-là. Et c'est ainsi que nous leur apportons des appuis financiers pour leur permettre d'effectuer des voyages, de payer les frais d'abonnement et aussi de motiver les moniteurs. De l'autre côté, nous sommes résolument engagés à négocier avec l'Église qui est la fondatrice donc, de ce centre, pour qu'elle nous rétrocède le centre et que nous prenions en main et que le management de ce centre puisse être plus efficace. C'est ce que nous entendons faire et nous avons commencé les pourparlers. Maintenant, pour ce qui est de nos actions propres, nous avons un centre de promotion de la femme et de la famille au sein duquel se déroulent les cours d'alphabétisation jeudi et les samedis. Il y a des moniteurs qui viennent apprendre aux femmes et aux hommes à lire et à écrire, et particulièrement des personnes qui sont analphabètes. Notamment, il y a une catégorie d'éleveurs, on appelle nomades, qu'on appelle les Bororo, et qui sont installés dans notre localité et qui sont très intéressés par cette activité. Et tout récemment, nous avons organisé une cérémonie de la remise des attestations de la première promotion et c'était une grande fête. Nous continuons dans cette activité et nous pensons que comme les gens sont intéressés, nous devrions continuer. Maintenant, parlant des perspectives, nous voulons désormais intégrer l'alphabétisation dans notre plan d'action annuel pour que même dans la budgétisation, nous prenions cela. Même si nos moyens sont limités, nous pensons que nous devrions le faire et que cette action doit être impersonnelle au maire. Ça doit devenir l'action de la commune et non un maire, parce qu'un maire doit passer. De l'autre côté, nous voulons aussi, dans le cadre de la célébration de la semaine communale d'apprentissage, intégrer une activité spécifique à l'alphabétisation. Par exemple, le concours de lecture, le concours de dictée, le concours de récitation en français, en anglais, en fouté, en péré. Donc voilà, et je pense que ça va traîner et ça va intéresser les gens. Nous allons également, dans un très bref délai, continuer à réorganiser, n'est-ce pas, notre centre pour que nous puissions intéresser plus les femmes à venir au centre, apprendre à lire et à écrire. Nous sommes en train de réfléchir dans ce sens-là pour essayer de ménager un emploi de temps qui ne puisse pas perturber leur organisation initiale dans les foyers. Voilà de manière ramassée ce que nous entendons.
Okay, I think we just got a quick, short technical problem right at the end, luckily, so that's okay. That was a great little snapshot of what's happening in Mayo Baleo. Great to see also that the focus is definitely in place to enhance and foster literacy opportunities for women in the city and making sure that the time is allocated for learning activities. So we'll move on to our last city presentation. And we have two speakers joining us today from the city of Villa Maria in Argentina. We have Miss Marietta Lorenzati, research professor at the National University of Cordoba. And we have our colleague, Gabriel Rios of the city of Villa Maria as well, who's here. So I think I'll give the floor now to Miss Marietta Lorenzati to start.
Hola, buenos días. Quiero agradecer esta invitación a las autoridades del Instituto de Aprendizaje a lo Largo de la Vida de Unesco, porque me permite compartir con colegas de distintos países algunas apreciaciones sobre las prácticas de cultura escrita que se desarrollaron en una experiencia educativa con jóvenes y adultos de la Municipalidad de Villa María, Ciudad del Aprendizaje en Argentina, durante la pandemia. Hablo del programa de alfabetización y educación básica de jóvenes y adultos que desde el año 2016 desarrolla acciones de finalización de la escolaridad obligatoria con el objetivo de garantizar la efectivización del derecho a la educación como derecho humano. A continuación, presentaré de manera global el programa, Luego compartiré las acciones desarrolladas en pandemia y finalmente analizaré algunas prácticas de cultura escrita y aprendizajes realizados y reconocidos por estudiantes de jóvenes y adultos. El programa comprende acciones de alfabetización, nivel primario y secundario, y se organiza a partir de centros de tutorías con educadores de distintas disciplinas, estudiantes universitarios avanzados que acompañan el aprendizaje de los jóvenes y adultos, promotores barriales que desarrollan acciones complementarias a las demandas educativas, como por ejemplo atender situaciones específicas de salud, apertura de los jardines maternales para que asistan sus hijos, equipo técnico con asesoramiento de investigadores de la Universidad Nacional de Córdoba y de la Universidad Nacional de Villa María, y el asesoramiento de la doctora Judith Kalman de México. También se entregan los materiales de trabajo, módulos con actividades y útiles escolares. A lo largo de estos 6 años, desde su creación, se han inscrito 3.500 personas en el nivel primario y secundario, lo que representa aproximadamente un 3,9% de la población total, un 4,86% de la población mayor de 15 años y un 66% de la matrícula son mujeres. Esto muestra la consolidación de una política local intersectorial, integral e integrada que tiene como eje la inclusión educativa. Desde sus inicios se pueden identificar 3 etapas con características definidas en cada una de ellas. Entre 2016 y 2020, la presencialidad. 2020-2021, pandemia, modalidad virtual. Y 2022 comenzamos con la bimodalidad, presencial y virtual. Quiero detenerme en 2 cuestiones conceptuales que orientan el trabajo con la cultura escrita y que son transversales en el programa. En primer lugar, entendemos que los jóvenes y adultos tienen conocimientos de la cultura escrita, conocen los usos y las consecuencias sociales porque están insertos en una sociedad letrada. Se los reconoce como personas que interactúan con objetos escritos y que usan distintos modos de otorgar sentido a la realidad, como las imágenes, el lenguaje verbal, los gestos, la escritura, entre otros. En esta línea también entendemos a la alfabetización en un sentido amplio y múltiple, como un proceso que va más allá de la codificación, la decodificación, las habilidades y las destrezas. En este programa, ser alfabetizado significa leer y escribir para establecer y mantener relaciones sociales, participar en actividades, conocer prácticas múltiples y complejas vinculadas con lo escrito, producir textos en diferentes formatos, soportes y modalidades, manejar las distintas tecnologías de la escritura y representaciones culturales, como lo escribimos con Judy Kalman en un trabajo hace un tiempo. Por esta razón, las prácticas de alfabetización están presentes a lo largo de toda la propuesta educativa y no es privativa del primer tramo educativo. ¿Cuáles fueron las acciones desarrolladas en pandemia? En pandemia el programa continuó sus actividades solo con el nivel secundario. Dada la disponibilidad informática de los estudiantes, se decidió trabajar con enlaces a documentos y formularios alojados en Google Drive. Los materiales de lectura se entregaban semanalmente en formato de texto en documentos de Word, conjuntamente con las actividades propuestas. Para la resolución de consignas y entrega de actividades, se recurrió a formularios autogestionados que permitían responder de forma online. Esta herramienta habilitó acceder a todas las respuestas de los estudiantes y analizar los distintos modos de comprensión de las consignas, tener el registro de las actividades entregadas y realizar un seguimiento de quienes no lo hacían. Un recurso fundamental fue el uso del WhatsApp como un componente de la propuesta, y en la modalidad remota emergente, los grupos de WhatsApp pasaron a ser el único canal comunicativo. Se enviaba y receptaban las actividades y se generaban diálogos y participación activa entre los estudiantes. ¿Cuál ¿Cuáles fueron las prácticas de cultura escrita observadas en la pandemia? Observamos múltiples prácticas de escritura. Una, escritura online como respuesta a los formularios de Google en el celular, computadora, tablet. 2, escritura a mano en soporte papel y fotografía, cuando la precariedad informática de los estudiantes impedía la práctica online. 3, en otros casos se enviaba la consigna por teléfono y las estudiantes, en este caso adultas mayores, respondían oralmente por teléfono a la docente, quien replicaba esta producción en la escritura. 4, en el caso de matemática e inglés, se optó por el trabajo con audios o videos de baja resolución, con el objeto de profundizar en temas puntuales. 5, los estudiantes realizaron búsqueda de imágenes e información en Internet que implicaron el uso de imágenes, escritura y oralidad. Estas prácticas muestran los diferentes modos de producir textos con características diversas y se alejan de la perspectiva que entiende a la alfabetización como adquisición de habilidades y destrezas. Destacamos también que estas prácticas de lectura generaron, mantuvieron y consolidaron relaciones sociales en el aislamiento. Expresan los estudiantes sobre lo que aprendieron. Los estudiantes destacaron que aprendieron temas que uno vive realmente. Conocimientos obtenidos en derecho, contabilidad y matemáticas que usaron en las negociaciones laborales. Los usos de herramientas digitales para construir prácticas digitales autónomas. Esto significan prácticas de lectura y escritura. También señalan de manera particular que aprendieron y está presente el compañerismo entre ellos. Por todas estas razones, las prácticas de cultura escrita son prácticas sociales, enmarcadas en otras prácticas sociales más amplias. Finalmente, quiero señalar que los estudiantes mostraron que pueden aprender junto a otros e identificaron sus distintos niveles de conocimientos y experiencias. Un señor expresó: hemos estado buscando cosas en Google o preguntándole, en mi caso, a mi nieta, que ahora va a empezar la universidad, preguntándole a ella lo de matemática a mi marido, y así me fueron ayudando para contestar. Se observa la participación y apoyo de la familia para la finalización de los estudios obligatorios. Este relato muestra que hay otras personas que pueden argumentar sus ideas, que ayudan a buscar otros recursos, que amplían la información con mayor facilidad, que pueden hacer los cálculos de otra manera. Destacamos la importancia del carácter asincrónico de la propuesta, pero también identificamos límites en la generación de instancias de debate y o puesta en común de las tareas en la modalidad virtual. La masividad de estudiantes y la imposibilidad de encuentros presenciales nos interpeló en los modos de pensar y elaborar una propuesta que se propuso responder a los intereses de los estudiantes. Es necesario trabajar directamente con los estudiantes sobre lo que ellos escriben, porque es en los intercambios alrededor de la producción propia donde aprenden a expresarse, a confrontar sus ideas y desarrollar su pensamiento y las prácticas de leer y escribir. Muchas gracias.
Marietta, thank you so much. I think, yeah, the interpretation just stopped now, so I assume that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for such a glimpse into the different activities taking place through your university, but also in the city of Villa Maria, and giving us also a bit of perspective in terms of how literacy can also create space for citizenship and solidarity within communities. We can also maybe get back to that a bit further on. And last but not least, today's first presentation is now actually our last. So I'd warmly welcome our team leader at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning to give us a glimpse into some of the activities UIL has been conducting in the space of literacy. And I think Raoul is here with us now. I'll give you the floor, Raoul. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marie. Dear participants, good morning.
I cannot
good
hear
afternoon.
you, Raoul.
You cannot hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you, Raul.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We already had the chance to listen some of the important initiatives that are taking place in different parts of the world. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this webinar on transforming literacy learning spaces. The webinar, as you can see, is in line with the theme of the year's International Literacy Day, which is taking place at the moment in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, but in many other places. I would like to wish everybody a very happy International Literacy Day today. And since 1967, this International Literacy Day celebration have taken place annually around the world to remind the public of the importance of literacy as a matter of dignity and human rights, and to advance the literacy agenda towards a more literate and sustainable society. This year, the ILD, as it's known, will be an opportunity to rethink the importance of literacy learning spaces to build resilience and ensure quality, equitable, and inclusive education for all learners. Our webinar today, it's really trying to provide relevant insights to the topic and share best local practices with regard to successful local literacy projects from most world regions. Cities, as we heard, can make a big difference through the various spaces, setting and modalities to reach a broad public audience with their literacy and numeracy initiatives for youth and adults. And today we want to present, and we already did, some of the learning initiatives. Next one, please. I think at this point, let me share with you some background information on the persistent literacy issues that bring us all together on this global platform. First of all, despite the concerted efforts at global level, at least 771 million youth and adults still cannot read and write. 2/3 of them are women. Hence, literacy is a gender policy issue, and it is a persistent challenge for policymakers and providers that require further and concerted efforts. Guided by the Sustainable Development Goals, UNESCO takes an approach to literacy that is lifelong, meaning for all age groups in different learning settings, that is intersectorial, and that is universal, meaning an issue for all countries. Youth and adult literacy has explicitly been mentioned in the formulation of SDG indicator 4.6.1, which states proportion of population in a given age group achieving at least a fixed proficiency in functional literacy and numeracy skills by sex. In line with this approach that UNESCO has taken over to improve the literacy situation across the globe, UNESCO developed the UNESCO Strategy for Youth and Adult Literacy 2020-2025. The member states adopted this strategy at UNESCO's 40th General Conference in Paris to guide UNESCO's work for the promotion of youth and adult literacy. Identified by the more than 80 member states, key partners and literacy experts through consultations, the new literacy strategy has 4 strategic priority areas. Number 1, supporting members in developing national literacy policies and strategies. Number 2, addressing the learning needs of disadvantaged groups, particularly women and girls. Number 3, leveraging digital technologies to expand access and improve learning outcomes. And the last one, to monitor progress and assessing literacy skills and programs. I want to take this opportunity to inform you that UNESCO has prepared a report on literacy, namely Literacy for Life, Work, and Lifelong Learning, Shaping Future Agendas. This document will be presented in a few days by the UN Secretary General at the 77th session of the General Assembly. The report offers an overview of the global literacy landscape, responses to the COVID-19 crisis, and achievements at national, regional, and global levels. It also will provide a recommendation for the further advancement of literacy as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next one, please. Moving to UIL's work in literacy, to the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning work in literacy, I want to highlight the Global Alliance for Literacy within the framework of lifelong learning. To advance literacy as an integral part of lifelong learning, but mainly to support the countries which need it most, GAL was initiated as an alliance for the countries with adult literacy rate below 50%, and the 9 countries with the largest population worldwide, which are home to 67% of the global population of youth and adults who lack basic literacy and numeracy. Today, GAL consists of 29 countries strongly committed to improving youth and adult literacy. One of the major activities of initiatives which focus GAL on improving capacities is improving capacities of literacy educators to use digital technologies for literacy instruction and learning. These initiatives aim to train by the end of 2022 nearly 100,000 literacy educators from at least 10 GAL countries. Next one, please. In addition to the global advocacy, policy setting, and capacity development, UIL also contributes to knowledge based on literacy, which I wish to highlight a few today. First of all is the International Review of Education, the Journal of Lifelong Learning, which is the world's longest running journal of comparative education. It publishes peer-review research articles on lifelong learning, policy, and practice, with a special focus on adult education, non-formal education, and literacy. Viewed through the lens of lifelong learning, it continues to add knowledge to the field of youth and adult literacy from around the world. Another important element is LeadBase, which is a database that provides policymakers, researchers, literacy program managers, and other stakeholders with insight into the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of notable literacy programs. It features around 250 case studies on youth and adult literacy programs from over 100 countries, all of which are freely available in English, in French, and Spanish. The database is continuously growing with more case studies added on an ongoing basis. And the last point, UIL is conducting currently a research project on how technologies support the literacy learning of refugees, migrants. And as part of this research project that is in cooperation with the Commonwealth of Learning, UIL have published guidelines on open and distance learning for youth and adult literacy to support literacy providers around the world in planning, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating their open and distance learning-based literacy programs. Next one, please. With these and many other initiatives that UIL is doing, we would like to continue promoting literacy globally to respond to persistent and emergency challenges, as well as future demands, and will contribute to global advocacy, promote knowledge and exchanges, build national and stakeholders' capacities, and improve program quality. To conclude, this year's International Literacy Day will be celebrated worldwide under the theme Transforming Literacy Learning Spaces, and will be an opportunity to rethink the fundamental importance of literacy learning spaces to build resilience and ensure quality, equitable and inclusive education for all. The International Literacy Day global celebration lies at the heart of regional, country, and most relevant for us today at the local level. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Marie.
Thank you so much, Raul, for providing some of the context around what UNESCO's activities are doing, but also at UIL more specifically, some of the exciting initiatives that countries can contribute to, but also cities. I think this leaves us with a little bit under 10 minutes for some question and responses from our speakers. And I'd like to invite all of the participants here today, if you have specific questions you would like to ask the speakers, you may do so using the Q&A little button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And to get us started, I think I'd like to ask maybe, we've heard about some of the barriers of participation, and I think it might be nice to maybe get a more grounded understanding of what these are. So what type of barriers there has been and there continues to be for participation in literacy activities in your city? And maybe we can also hear from Ulrike to give us a bit more of a general overview on what types of barriers have been clearly identified and how these might impact the local level as well. So actually, if Ulrike, if it's okay with you, we can start with a general understanding of what these barriers are in a few points, and then move over to some of the city examples and what have been some of the solutions set up for this.
Yeah, yes, I think indirectly we have already got some idea about the possible barriers that may exist, because in all the three examples that we heard, they were implicitly mentioned. The barriers have to do with physical barriers. If the learning space is too far for people to reach there, or they don't have the money to travel to the place. Security is also an issue very often for women and girls, to be forced to cover larger distances. Also, the daytime of the classes may be a barrier. We heard that from the example from Cameroon, that women may be prevented from participating if the class is taking place at a time where they have to cater for the meals at home. Childcare is an issue. We heard from the Argentinian example that childcare services help women to participate in classes more easily, so that they can leave their children during the classes in a safe place. Language may be a barrier if classes take place in a language that people are not proficient in, or they don't understand. In multicultural and multilinguistic environments. Yeah, I think these are some of the examples. And for, the digital environment, I have mentioned already some of the hurdles or barriers that may exist. But I would like to highlight, particularly for elderly people, it may be a major challenge to use the devices that help them to connect online, because they have, maybe they don't have the device, or they don't have the skills, or they have nobody at home who can help them to use them for their learning. So I think these are some examples that I would like to summarize. There are probably many more hurdles.
Thank you. I think I completely agree that these were implicitly mentioned. I think it's nice to get them kind of in a general order, so we understand what these are very specifically for our audience today. And maybe I'll invite some cities to weigh in on what has been their biggest, maybe one or two biggest challenge, starting with Marietta, who's raised her hand, and then we'll move over to our colleagues in Korea. Marietta, the floor is yours.
¿Puedo contestar? En realidad, nosotros en Villa María, uno de los obstáculos que tuvimos en pandemia específicamente fue el acceso a los dispositivos tecnológicos. por eso decidimos trabajar solamente con el nivel secundario y no con los sectores más vulnerables de la población por la precariedad informática. Pudimos superar en la época de la presencialidad un obstáculo que señalaba la compañera y que es la distancia y el tema de la familia de los hijos. Eso en la presencialidad lo pudimos superar porque los centros de tutorías están en el barrio, están cerca de la casa de los estudiantes, y abrir los jardines maternales en el horario que los adultos estudiaban facilitó muchísimo el problema familiar, porque llevaban los niños y además los niños en esos espacios hacían la tarea escolar, es decir, tratamos de articular el trabajo de los niños con el trabajo de los padres, ¿no? Es decir, en el mismo momento estaban trabajando con el conocimiento escolar, tanto los adultos como los niños. Eso para nosotros fue un desafío muy importante. Por eso también tenemos un alto nivel de permanencia en el programa. Esto digo, sería como las cuestiones para marcar, para señalar. Y en estos momentos, en la bimodalidad, sí hay un problema que estamos viendo, y el obstáculo es que la mayoría de los adultos quiere seguir en la virtualidad. Están muy reacios a volver a los centros de tutorías, que para nosotros es muy importante porque es el modo de compartir entre todos, de estudiar con el otro, bueno, de generar esta instancia social que implica aprender, ¿no? Esa sería nuestra apreciación desde el programa de Villa María.
Thank you, Marietta. That's interesting, the dynamics between what the teachers want, what the learners want, and how do you accommodate the two in the context of creating a space for learning and literacy. So I'll give the floor to our colleagues in Andong to give us maybe a general understanding of what some of the main barriers, maybe one or two, have been, and the ways to deal with those efficiently and effectively. And if you also want to echo what Ulrike said, you know, in terms of barriers, if something sounds like it does apply to your context, please feel free to also let us know.
You know, in our program, we gotta we do that program face to face. So in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, so we couldn't we had to stop the program. So in 2020, there's no classes at all. But so from that situation, we had to find a way. I mean, like a virtual lectures or something. So that's why we started to thinking of the digital literacy to provide the elderlies the virtual lectures. So if we successfully do this to run the digital literacy programs, then we're gonna have no problems, even if we faces another pandemic or something.
Thank you. That's helpful. I think digital literacy is one of the two words we've heard about most today, actually, in different contexts and capacity. I think we have one question we have a little bit of time to address that is quite interesting, coming from Hajjaj Musaid in the chat, one of our attendees. He mentions that sometimes there are problems of finalization or maybe completion of programs by women specifically. And he's asking how one can motivate women in the city, at the city level, to complete a program. Maybe Marietta, if you have experience or if you have something you could share with regards to women's participation and completion of specific literacy programs that if that's come across, if there's ways of motivating women that you've been able to implement at the city level, perhaps you could let us know.
Sí, a mí me preguntan. Bien, es una característica en Argentina que las mujeres asistan a los cursos de adultos. Históricamente están las mujeres en los cursos de adultos. Entonces, no hay que hacer una convocatoria específica. Lo que nosotros vemos es no solo que las mujeres llegan a los centros de tutorías, sino que llegan con las hijas, con las nietas, con las hermanas, es decir, va mucho más allá de una cuestión individual. Hay una participación familiar, ¿no? Y esto también ayuda a salir a contrarrestar algunas apreciaciones en relación con la familia no apoya, la familia no le interesa la educación. Es decir, lo que nosotros vemos específicamente es que sí hay un apoyo muy fuerte de la familia y sí hay una participación de los distintos integrantes. Yo no diría que en Villa María hicimos una convocatoria específica o que tiene alguna característica especial, sino que es histórico que estén las mujeres en educación. Hay muchas más mujeres que adultos y creo que además Villa María, al ser ciudad del aprendizaje, tiene otras actividades que se relacionan con el programa, con la biblioteca municipal, el tema de la apertura de los jardines maternales también permitió reuniones con la familia de los niños y eso también fue muy importante en términos de la convocatoria en general, ¿no? El trabajar con las iglesias desde el comienzo, con los distintos sectores. Por eso digo yo que, decimos nosotros, yo solamente represento a un grupo muy grande que está trabajando en el programa, que esto muestra la consolidación de una política local, ¿no? Donde están los distintos sectores trabajando. Yo diría que es eso, va mucho más allá de una convocatoria específica a las mujeres.
Thank you. I think I'll give the floor to Andong for a very quick maybe remark with regards to involving women in these literacy programs and the different spheres of learning. If you have a few comments you could share, and then I'll pass the floor to Ulrike. You're muted.
To encourage the women to participate in the program. You mean?
Yes, exactly.
In my experience, there's no difference between men and women in participating in the rate of the participation. But we have some difficulties when starting the new class. They don't know much about our program because they're isolated and they don't use the internet or something, so they don't know about our program at all. So we have to convince them to start the program. So we use the head of each villages, to monitor how much people are illiterate or something. Then we select the villages, and then we convince the elderly one by one. Our program is awesome, and you can. It's not just learning Korean, but you can learn many things, and we provide many special events. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity to hang out with your neighbors or something. So in this way, we started our program, our classes in a new town.
Thank you. Ulrike, if you want to give us a few last words on involving women and motivating women.
I don't need to repeat the experiences that have been shared right now. I just would say you need to research what are the hurdles, what are the problems or challenges that women have to overcome in the specific case, and then find, ideally together with the specific group, some solutions that help them to ease their participation. And usually, so it's research that you need to do as a program provider or as a teacher, and find action points that help to overcome the problems. Usually it is more flexibility. It is to help to create an enabling environment may include many factors, not only one specific, but normally it's a range of different problems or challenges that have to be addressed. And I would like to underline also the family approach. I think this came up very clearly from the example that we heard from Villa Maria, that you approach literacy as a family endeavor and not only a problem of specific women. And I think that this may work wonderfully for women to keep motivated and to continue their learning.
Thank you. I think that really covers the different questions we had. Not all of them, unfortunately. It would have been great to ask the other two questions, but we are at the end of this webinar, and I would like to thank all of the speakers for being here today. I'll be passing the floor now for closing remarks to my colleague Christina Drews, and I'll see you right after that.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you. My name is Christina Drews from the Learning Cities Coordination Team, and I greet you virtually as well. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear old and new learning cities, we welcomed 77 new cities last week. We hope you had an opportunity to celebrate with us this year's International Literacy Day, and that you could benefit from the dialogue with experts from 4 regions of the world. We heard today from Korea, from Argentina, from Cameroon, and from our expert based in Hamburg, where also our institute is based. The objective today was to increase awareness of diverse literacy learning spaces, which is especially relevant in our learning cities, where a culture of lifelong learning is key. It was mentioned today that literacy is a whole dimension connected to health and well-being, related to social relations, to very practical circumstances, preventing, for instance, women to get access to literacy classes. Access in general was a key word used in the presentations today. We hope that this shows the importance of the topic, which sometimes loses attention. And we hope that also the importance of the local level is being highlighted in providing and/or facilitating access. Literacy involves a whole continuum of learning. It enables an individual to achieve goals, develop knowledge, and of course, potential to participate fully in the community and the society. It can no longer be described as a summation of skills. It can be seen as the ability to identify, to understand, to interpret, create, and communicate in different contexts. It can be really seen as a continuum where individuals move back and forth from being non-literate to literate, depending, of course, on the acquisition of skills that they learn at different stages in their lives. And for this, we need environments that provide an atmosphere where a literate can develop and continuously use skills for the improvement of their lives. So it's really up to create a sustainable literate environment for each individual to live, and because a learned person is a product of a stimulating literate environment. And we are sure that learning cities have special interest in planning and implementing such kind of environment. For our interested audience, UIL has launched a new publication on the review of innovative technology and literacy, and education for refugees, migrants, and internally displaced persons. My colleague will hopefully share the link. And also referring to another region of the world, and with the support of the UNESCO Cairo office, guidelines for implementing open and distance learning are available in Arabic. So there are open source in English and Arabic available. So we hear today about challenges, but also, of course, about the crisis, such as the pandemic and the rapid movement to adapt to new tools and devices. And please let me also announce that in 1 week from now, the Transforming Education Summit is being held in New York. It's a response to the global crisis in education, and it provides a unique opportunity for world leaders to discuss this important process. So yes, I will close now the webinar, but also thank, of course, our panelists and also the special support we got today from interpreters from Mexico and Argentina. And of course, you can access the recorded webinar on our website, as well as the presentations. So thank you so much for attending, and have a nice day, have a good evening, and stay well. Goodbye.